Thank you, Hope. That very informative presentation. I think a lot of people aren't really aware of what's going on with regard to that. So now we're going to begin our live Q&A, and you've shown where they can get your book and how to contact you. So that's very helpful to the audience. I'll be asking some questions, and I will be also opening up to the audience to ask questions. And we don't, if you're not sure how so basically real quickly, I just want to go over a couple of things. We don't take questions directly from the chat. Instead, we ask everyone to virtually raise their hand. If you're not sure how to do this, what you want to do is click on the reactions button on the bottom right, second from the right button on the in Zoom. And once you click on that, you're going to select the raise hand function in the pop-up menu. When I call your name, I will unmute you and prompt you to state where you are from and to ask your questions. We ask that everyone keep their questions brief and on topic. So with that said, let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and start asking a question here. So, yeah, you went over how there is a lot of, washing of the truth. Are cows, pigs, chickens, turkeys, hens, any of these animals treated any better at all since when this kind of awareness of how animals are being treated started?
Well, what I found when I was doing my research on this, and I was going to conventional farms, just your regular, no label, whatever, general label farm. And I also went to, all these labeled farms, the certified humane and cage-free and organic dairy, all of that. And what I found really was that it varied from farm to farm. I mean, there wasn't this standard across the board. This is how animals are treated in cage-free, and this is how animals are treated in conventional. It really wasn't that way. It was kind of from farm to farm. I saw situations where animals were treated better, I felt from my observation, on conventional farms than on like a cage-free farm, for instance. So it really depends. I mean, it's hard to say. But as far as the industry standard and what is happening to the animals from an industry standard, little has changed since the 70s, since the 80s. Very little has changed. In fact, the only thing that's really changed is they've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and now they're just mega dairies and mega farms. So there's so many more animals, so much more confinement and congestion. So, is it better? No. Across the board, no. I would say not.
All right, thank you. If people eat, so what is the impact on, of leather? People who, are vegan, when people think of vegan, they tend to think of food, as opposed to, the people who aren't vegan think of food as opposed to other aspects of animals. Is leather, a byproduct of these animals? Is it a separate industry that has their own animals that are slaughtered specifically for the leather, as opposed to just meat animals that they're using all the parts?
Yeah, no, actually they get leather. There's no separate leather industry. The leather is coming from the beef cows, the dairy cows. But it's not necessarily just a byproduct. A lot of people think, oh, it's just a byproduct of the industry. No, they make a lot of money on leather, and leather is a huge, huge industry, of course. And actually, environmentally, leather is very bad. People don't realize this, but the tanneries, when they are processing the leather, there's a lot of chemicals that go into the processing. There's a lot of wastewater pollution that comes out of the plants. And in fact, neighborhoods around tanneries will often have higher rates of problems, with their water, with the air, with asthma and breathing problems. It's very pollutive, the leather industry. So yeah, there's a lot going on there, and it's certainly something to avoid.
Thank you. So is this idea of lab grown meat a real solution for, assuming that it comes to fruition, for stopping the mistreatment of animals and the impact on the environment?
That's a big one. That's a big, big topic and messy topic to unpack. I don't know that I'm really going to make a comment, honestly. I'm still on the fence, honestly, about that one. There are people in the movement, in the animal advocacy movement, that are on both sides of this issue, that feel that it's a good thing and a good tool in our toolbox, and there's others that feel that this could be a detrimental bad thing. So I'm still on the fence there. I'm going to just leave it at that. Is some wonderful resources online to learn more about it, but it's not an issue I like to tackle, honestly.
Okay. Is it a realistic goal to get the whole world to stop eating animal products, including fish, milk, eggs? And should this be the ultimate goal?
Should this be the ultimate goal? Yes. I would say absolutely yes. To have a truly compassionate world where these animals are free of suffering, where there is, a kind, compassionate world where animals get to live their own lives. Absolutely yes. Fish as well. I feel that we need to come to a place where we see animals for their own inherent worth, where they live free of human imposed exploitation and suffering. That should be the goal. Absolutely. Is it a realistic goal? Well, I hope so. I hope so. And I think so. I mean, I often say that I very much believe that our inherent nature as humans is compassion and is compassionate. And, when we're driving by an animal that has been killed on the side of the road, like roadkill, we don't think about lunch or dinner as, we're not salivating for that animal like a carnivore would. We are like, oh, we have a reaction of, oh, that's too bad. That is our compassionate nature. When we see ducks trying to get across the road, everyone will stop their cars and try and help the mama ducks across the road, but then they go and have duck at the Chinese restaurant for dinner, So there's a disconnect there going on, but I think that once we start making those connections, seeing animals for the individuals that they are, for their wonderful personalities, their joyful lives, yes, I do believe that we will come to a place. I mean, maybe my head's in the clouds, but you have to visualize where we're going, right? You have to, if you want to create a different world, you have to see it. You have to be able to believe that it can happen and see it. And so I do see that. I see a world free of suffering for animals.
Thank you. Are there any countries or anywhere in the world that is moving in the right direction, with some sort of speed about, eating, going from eating lots of animals and wearing lots of animals to eating less animals, and because they're inspired by this type of thinking?
Yeah, it's happening worldwide, actually. We're seeing movement in many, many countries. The Asian countries, China, it's amazing how much progress they're making in animal advocacy, in alternative proteins, all of that. The European countries, always the amount of vegan restaurants now in some of these more major cities, like Berlin and Paris. It's just amazing the amount of vegan options. So it's really a worldwide movement now, and we're seeing movement everywhere, which is very, very hopeful.
And are the governments actually bringing this about at all in any of these areas, or is it a bottom up sort of movement?
Bottom up, certainly, but there is some movement. There's these interesting laws that are being passed around sentience and animals, like recognizing the sentience of animals by large governmental bodies in South American countries and in European countries. It's kind of fascinating that there's these laws, but then the practices aren't aren't following, with that, but I think that they will. So where, there's these wonderful laws being passed, acknowledging that animals are sentient beings, should be treated humanely, and recognizing that as government bodies. But then, of course, industry, there's so much suffering that goes on, but it's changing. It is changing. I believe very much that we're seeing that recognition of animals as sentient individuals that should not be commodified and killed.
How do you respond to people who argue that it's natural for humans to consume meat? You've got the paleo people who say that we've been doing this and this is sort of our natural way of eating, and that it's part of our natural evolutionary history. How do you do so persuasively to those people?
Yeah, and just to note that I see Sylvia's raised her hands. We do have a question.
Yes.
So yeah, the natural. Well, this really is it's called the naturalistic fallacy, is what this is called. I mean, to assume that something, just because something is natural, that it's healthy or right or whatever, it's that is not necessarily the case. Arsenic will kill you. It's natural. So that's not a great argument. We now live very, what could be argued as unnatural lives in our homes, in our running water and all of that, but certainly not unhealthy. It's been very healthy for us to preserve our longevity in life, to live the lives we do now in certain ways. So anyway, it's just not a good argument. I would think the natural thing, like I was saying, would be to see an animal that is wounded and want to go and kill that animal and eat that animal raw, right? That would be natural. That would be the natural carnivore way of eating. Is anyone going to do that? I mean, people can barely, fathom having to butcher their own animals. So I think really our natural state is eating plants. I think that's what's natural. What is enjoyable and mouth watering when you go to a strawberry patch and pick a strawberry, right? Or an apple off a tree. That seems much more natural to me than attempting to hunt, grab, kill an animal and eat it raw, right? So let's look at what's really natural.